Hey guys, I'm back and we are talking about Deity, which is book number 3 in the Covenant series. This is the sleeves getting caught. This is the OG cover of Deity. Yes. And then this is the new cover, and like seriously, so like pay attention. So first of all, it's beautiful, right? But then second of all, notice there's a rose like necklace. I think it's a necklace. Anyway, so that's the new cover. Okay, so review, definitely 5 stars. Y'all know I love Jennifer Armentrout. Don't mind my wet head. It takes a long time to dry, and I ain't about that life. Okay, 5 stars. Jennifer Armentrout. Love Jennifer Armentrout. Love this series, and I'm gonna go with the same thing I said about Pure and Half-Blood, which is I'm loving it so much more on the reread than I did. I mean, I enjoyed it the first time, but I've like been sucked into this series for real. Like, oh, it's so good. It's so good. My Instagram is just all Aiden quotes. Like one Seth quote, and I was such a Seth fangirl the first time around, and this time I'm like in love with Aiden, so I don't know what's happening, but it's a wonderful series. You should totally read it. So here's the little review, right? Spoiler free. So there's kind of a shift in her, and the symbol that's on there is the symbol. It's this symbol right here. It's the mark of the Apollyon. So there's like kind of a shift or change in her relationship with Seth and in Seth's personality and his behavior. Or maybe we see more of it than we did before. Like maybe he was hiding it before. I don't know. But there's definitely a change, right? And she and Aiden get close again. Because, in Pure, they kind of, he kind of pushed her away. And she has to deal with threats from the same threats that she dealt with in Pure, but then also new threats. Put it that way. She's also trying to sacrifice herself to save the people she loves, like constantly. Like I literally, like at one point, was like to my book talk people. I was like, y'all, Alex tearing my nerves up trying to be a martyr every time I turn around. She gets reunited with a friend, and she finds new things out about people that she thought she knew. There are more people trying to make a play for her, and so she and her group, her support group, have to face threats kind of within and without. History is on repeat, and things will never be the same for Alex, for anybody in this world, right? In the Hematoy world. We get to go to new places. We get to meet some more gods and dogs. And then she has to face what she's been fearing since she found out that she was the Apollyon, and that's her awakening. So all of that juicy stuff, there's a lot. Like, I don't know how, I was telling Kaylee from K Books, I was like, I don't know how these freaking videos are 40 minutes long. Like, they're longer than From Blood and Ash and Akafoth, and like the books are not that much thicker. She was like, oh girl, you ain't gonna give them below 40 minutes. That ain't happening. So that was the review. Love it. Read it. So now for the recap. Now this is the spoilers. It's got my Doctor Who necklace on. Professor River song. Spoilers. Okay. So Alex is sick. Like when we start this book, Alex is sick. She's never been sick. Seth is with her. It's a random hair. Seth is with her, and when she gets up and goes to class, like Olivia wants to talk to her, but she kind of like starts off snarky. She don't have the best opener. Olivia doesn't. And so Alex picks her up by her throat. Yeah. And Leon has to pull her off Olivia, and then Leon gives her a letter that Aiden gave to him that LaDawn gave to Aiden, and it's from LaDawn, and it says, your father's alive. So she goes to find Aiden. Like, Leon kind of lets it, because she's like, where is Aiden? I need to talk to him. And he's like, don't be interrupting Aiden's training. Yeah. So she finds Aiden in the training room, and she shows him the letter, and she's like crying, and he's holding her, and it's, you know, beautiful. And Aiden points out, he's like, you know what this means, right? Your father is a half-blood. And so when she gets back to the dorm, she's kind of thinking about it, and she realizes that a half and a pure makes an Apollyon. Remember what the oracle said? The oracle said love is the root of the Apollyon. Okay, so impure. So that's why it's forbidden for pures and halves to get together, because if pures and halves get together, then you have Apollons, and can you imagine a bunch of Apollons running around, and then a bunch of God killers running around, and so, you know, big mess. So Seth shows up, and he wants to know what happens, because, you know, he can feel her emotions. And she shows him the letter, and he's like, well, who else knows about this? And he's kind of like, he keeps like pushing her, and then she, you know, lets it slip that she told Aiden, and he's like mad that she told Aiden. He said, you know, you didn't even look for me. You just went straight to Aiden first. So then he takes her hands and tells her that they're working on blocking on her mental shields. They're in her dorm room. And he's like, oh, let's work on your blocking on your mental shields, right? And she starts to feel the Akasha, the power thing happening. And she tries to pull her hands away, and he won't let her. And then another mark appears. And she's like kind of out of it. Like, whenever Seth draws off of her, it weakens her. But at the same time, like, I don't know, like she says, because he's like, does it hurt? And she's like, no, it feels kind of good. But Seth kind of gets a rush, like a high off of it. So they're making out, and then Leon starts banging on the door, and they all go to Marcus's office, and Alex is literally like falling asleep in the chair. Like, she cannot stay awake. She's exhausted. And they're discussing what to do to keep Alex safe, and Lucian wants to hide her away, and Alex is like, no, I want to be a sentinel. And when she gets to Romvi's class, so Instructor Romvi is one of the instructors there at Covenant. When she gets to Romvi's class, and if you remember from Pure, I think it was in Pure, he had the downturned torch tattoo. So when she's sparring with Jackson, and he whispers something to Jackson. Jackson is not fighting fair. Like, he's doing things that normally they're not supposed to do when they're sparring. And he kicks her in the face. Like, she has a freaking boot print on her face. And then he goes to stomp her head in. Like, he's going to kill her. And Aiden shows up and beats his hind parts. And then takes her to the med center and gets her cleaned up and gets her stitched. So Marcus, after what has happened, now has people guarding her 24 hours a day. And that is Leon, Aiden, and Leonard, Linard. Anyway. So Seth shows up, Aiden leaves. The next day in practice, Aiden asks her what's up, because she shouldn't have been sick. Like, you shouldn't be sick. And you should have been able to take Jackson. What is going on with you? And he asks about Seth. And he takes her to the sensory deprivation chamber to spar. Because he's like, you know, you kind of need to figure out what you're afraid of, what's going on. And he tells her, he says, you're afraid of losing yourself, and that she needs to face her fear. And she asks what he's afraid of. This is a quote from Aiden. I'm afraid of never being allowed to feel what I do. So she's lying on the mat thinking. He leaves out, like, and he's standing outside and just kind of letting her have time to figure out what's going on in her head, right? And Luke comes in and has a heart-to-heart with her and tells her, you know, he's like, you have friends if you would stop being such a bitch. And so she's kind of, you know, coming to terms with herself and everything that's happened. And she leaves out and Aiden is walking her back. And when they're on the way back to the dorm, they pass Jackson, the one that, you know, tried to stomp her head in, and he is beat all to pieces. Like somebody done tore him up. And, and so I think he says he fell or something. Anyway, Aiden goes with him. She confronts Seth and is like, I know you beat Jackson up. And he's like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Why would I do something like that? And so one night she's in the rec room. Because when she went to Aiden, Aiden's like, she's like, what do I do? He's like, well, why don't you just send a letter back to LaDawn to give to your dad? And so she keeps trying to write this letter and can't. So one night she's in the rec room trying to write the letter. And Olivia comes in and talks to her and apologizes. And Alex apologizes. And they're friends again. Yay! So she starts hanging out in the training room with Aiden again. Like, they're not training, they're just hanging out. Like, spending time together, talking, whatever. And one night, Seth comes to her room to tell her that he's going to New York with Lucian. And they start making out, and big surprise, another mark. So Alex asks if he's doing it on purpose. Like, is he trying to make her, like, awaken ahead of schedule? Like, is he doing the marks on purpose? And he gets mad. He gets mad and defensive. And so, okay, just a side note, right? Like, if you're dating somebody, boy, girl, whatever, I don't care. Love who you love. If you're dating somebody and they're constantly accusing you of cheating, right? They're constantly accusing you of doing something. It's because they're doing it. It's a defense mechanism, right? So when Alex says, are you doing this on purpose? And he gets all pissy, like, I just want to spend time with you. I just want to touch you. What's wrong with that? To turn it back around on her and make it act like she's the crazy one. He up to something. Y'all just took that back away in there. So, the next day, they're, you know, training around the marsh. Seth and Alex are. And he has her pinned down. And she's telling him, like, you know, get off of me. And he's like, make me. Like, I know you can do this. Make me. And Leon shows up and pulls Seth off of Alex because Alex is constantly being guarded. And Seth goes for Leon. And then Alex tries to break them up and gets flung into the muck. Then Aiden and the guards show up. And Seth starts taunting Aiden. Like he says something like, I know you wish it was you in her bed, or in her bed instead of me. And he says something about wearing her out at night or something like that to make it sound like they're doing the booty that they're not doing. And so those two start fighting, Aiden and Seth. And then Leon and the guards break them up. Then Seth comes for Aiden again. And Alex has to break Seth and Aiden up. So the next day, Seth comes to tell her bye because he's getting ready to leave for New York, and gives her a cell phone so she can call him. And she walks with him to the car. And Lucian and Seth just start, like, I mean, just sucking up to each other, just so bad. Like, you just want to be like, y'all, do that in the car. I mean, not here. So, I actually wrote gross. I wrote gross. So, once he's gone, Alex actually, like, feels relief. Like, she feels relief. And, like, that should tell you something, right? When your significant other is gone and you're like, whew, that should tell you something. So, she's talking to Leon, and he asks about Seth and tells her to pay attention to what is need and what is want. And where have we heard that before? From the Oracle. And Alex is like, wait a minute, what? But Leon's gone, and Aiden shows up. And she shows him the book, the book of Greek myths and legends or whatever that he gave her way back in Half-Blood. And all the stuff about the Order of Thanatos, because she looked in that book to find out more about the Order of Thanatos, but it's all in Greek, so she asks Aiden to read it. So apparently, Aiden reads it, and he's telling her that the purpose of the Order of Thanatos was to protect the secrecy of the Hematoi, right? Protect their secret from the mortal world, but also to protect the gods. And they were given daggers dipped in Titan's blood. So that's how they're able to kill the Apollons. And they're the ones that killed Solaris in the first. So Aiden is like, you know, Aiden's a smart guy. And Aiden's thinking, he's like, shouldn't Seth know about this stuff? Because didn't you tell me that he told you that you get all the memories of the previous Apollon? So shouldn't he know about this stuff? And she's like, I don't think Seth is being completely honest with me. I ain't got no tea, but I got some water. I'm gonna sip my water while Alex think about that. Okay. So Aiden tells her not to go to Romvey's class anymore. And he's like, what else are you not telling me? And so she finally tells him about what's been going on with Seth and the marks. And when she gets back to the dorm, she calls Seth, but she doesn't get any answer. So the next day, the council guards come and pull her out of class. And when she gets to Marcus's office, it's Telly there, Headmaster Telly from Pure, from the New York Covenant. Yes, okay. So he's asking her about the Pure Blood guard that she killed. But he ain't supposed to know. Ain't nobody supposed to know. Except Aiden and Seth and the two Pures that Aiden compulsed. Use compulsion? Whatever. Compelled. So, Alex gives him nothing. So he tells her that Seth was sent to New York to kill all the half-bloods that the elixir is not working on. You know, they give the half-bloods that go into servitude, they give the elixir to make them A, addicted, and B, compliant. Or A, compliant, B, addicted, whatever. To make them want to continue to be servants. So he's like, he keeps at her, trying to get her to confess to killing this pure blood guard. And she won't do it. And he actually hits her twice. And A, because he's butthole and wanted to hit her, and B, to try and get her to retaliate, right? So then he would have her because she struck a pure. So he tells her that she has until Friday to confess and turn herself in, and if she doesn't, he's going to go after everybody she loves. And she asks him, she's like, why do you hate me so much? And he says, oh, I don't. I hate what you are. Okay, bigot. So Marcus, Aiden, and guard Leonard show up. Marcus says, and Telly leaves. Marcus says he's going to report Telly to the council, and that Alex is supposed to be guarded now even when she's in class. Aiden walks her to her room and asks her what happened, but she doesn't want to say, and he keeps pushing. And so she finally tells him, and he's like, don't do anything crazy or stupid. So she calls Seth and tells him what happened, and Seth tells her the same thing Aiden says. He says, don't do anything crazy or stupid. So Alex can't sleep that night, and she's thinking about it, and she's like, you know, I don't want anything to happen to Aiden. I don't want anything to happen to Marcus, because Telly's telling her, he's like, I know it had to be Marcus, Seth, Leon, or Aiden, and I'll come after all of them. He said, I'll come after LaDawn too. So she can't sleep. She's thinking about it. She's like, you know what? I'm gonna turn myself in. I'm gonna sacrifice myself to save the people I love. And I'm like, if she don't quit with this, Alex. So she pushes, when she gets up, she's like, that my dog, he fussing at somebody. So when she gets up, Aiden is there. Because they knew she might try and do something crazy or stupid, and so they had one person in her dorm room guarding her and one person outside her window in case she tried to hop out the window. So she pushes him, he grabs her, they end up on the bed, and he tells her it gets harder every time to stop, and she tells him don't stop. And so he kisses her, and then they cuddle and go to sleep, and when she wakes up, he's still holding her. And here's a quote from Alex. All of me, my heart and my soul would always belong to him. And Aiden goes to the bathroom. Aiden gets up in the morning and goes to the bathroom, and there's a knock on the door. And Alex opens the door, and it's guard Leonard. And he tells her that Telly is gone, and then he stabs her right in the freaking gut and tells her that Telly would have at least let her live. And I wrote a very bad word, and I texted a very bad word to the book people. And it rhymes with duck. Okay. Aiden comes out, kills Leonard. He's holding pressure on her wound and telling her, oh God, I'm gonna cry. He's telling her, agape moo, hold on. Because he always calls Alex agape moo. So then there's a popping sound and light, and she wakes up by the river Styx. Yes. So she meets Carrie Papiri, which is Grandma Papiri's like great-great-granddaughter or something, because Grandma Papiri was like 200 years old. So she's talking to her, and she tells her that she got killed by a bunch of demons and that they're going to meet again. Ding, 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 ding. She's like, I'm 99% sure we're going to meet again. So then she's trying to figure out what does she do, like what's she supposed to do. And then Caleb finds her, and she jumps on him, and she's crying, and they're talking, and she asks about her mom, and he says her mom's back to being her mom, and that he plays Mario Kart on the Wii with Hades and Persephone. And then he tells her that there's some blonde god arguing with Hades for her soul, and that he has to tell her about Seth. And this is a quote from Caleb. He says, he doesn't really know Alex. He thinks he's in control, but he's not. Don't believe everything you hear. There's still hope. He tells her to tell Olivia that he would have picked LA and that she'll know what it means. And she wakes up to Aiden, and he tells her that Leon showed up, put his hand on her chest, and told Aiden to get her to the med center. Leon is a god. Yes. Do you remember when the Oracle said, I think Leon said it too. I can't remember, but I know the Oracle said that the gods are around. They're around. So she was dead at the med center, and Leon showed up and put his hand on her chest and said, breathe, Alex. And she did. She started breathing again. So Aiden kisses her cheek and says, you know, you please don't do anything like that ever again. Like, I can't feel that way ever again. And Marcus comes in and tells her that Leon is Apollo. Now that's funny, because I don't know if y'all remember, but I think it was Pure. Her and Leon are talking in the garden by the statue of Apollo. And she's like talking all this junk about Apollo. And he's like, you know, everything you hear is not true, right? Like, he's getting all offended. And then at one point, like, she even tells him, has anybody ever told you look like Apollo? So Marcus tells her that he's like, yes, I'm tough on you, but that doesn't mean I don't care about you. You know, I'm your uncle. I love you. And you, from now on, you need to tell me what's going on. And it was just like, oh, because you kind of don't know, because Marcus is like, he's always looked out for her, but he's never been nice to her. So you don't really know if he, you know, cares about her or not. So now you finally know that, yes, he does love his niece. So they decide not to tell Seth. And they've talked to Lucian, and Lucian says that he thinks that that's best. Because I think Marcus said he called Lucian, and they agreed that nobody should tell Seth, because Seth will go off like a freaking atomic bomb if he finds out that Alex died. And that they're looking for Telly because he never made it to New York. So Alex calls Seth, and he's in the bed with some girl. Yes. And she asks about the order and about having a Pure making an Apollyon. And he's like, why are you asking? And then, you know, she says something about, is he with boobs? That was some girl that he was hanging out with when they were in New York. And he's like, you know, whatever, you're there and I'm here. And then he hangs up the phone. Yes. Like, what a freaking douche canoe. So Leon tells them that the gods created the Apollyons in case they were ever needed, and now that day has come. Like, Alex is needed now. So Apollyons only come from female Pures and male halves. And the gods can't kill the Apollyons. The marks that they have protect them. Only the Order or another Apollyon can kill an Apollyon. Seth knows all of this. Seth is the danger and Alex is the savior, because apparently the prophecy surrounding her birth was that one would be the destroyer and one would be the savior. And so the gods are worried about what's going to happen when Seth becomes the god killer. So he tells them, Apollo tells Marcus and them that they need to get Solos, a sentinel from Nashville, transfer their stat because he can be trusted. And he tells Aiden about, well, that's it. And then he pops out. And then Alex tells Aiden about the underworld and that she remembers. And she's like, I have to tell Olivia that I saw Caleb. And he's like, no, you can't tell anybody yet because we can't let anybody know what happened. And so she goes to stay at Aiden's to like keep her safe because Apollo's like, you need to keep her away from Lucian. So Aiden is showing her around the house and asks her about Seth again. Like, Aiden keeps like, are you sure you're not just settling for Seth? And so finally, she's like, you know, you can just admit that you're jealous. And she goes to leave, and he pulls her on his lap. And I'm just like, yes, please. And then freaking Deacon wakes up and turns the hallway light on. So the next day, she's wandering around the house and ends up in this closed off room where all their personal effects was. Because she noticed, like, as she's walking through the house, like, there's no photo albums, there's no pictures, like, it was kind of weird. And she goes to this room that had been closed off, and there's all the pictures and all the personal effects, along with a guitar. And Aiden comes in and says, you shouldn't be in here. And she apologizes and goes to leave, and he grabs her arm and says, don't leave. And he tells her about the night his parents died. And it's very, like, it's very traumatic. And so there was a half-blood guard that saved his and Deacon's life, and that's what made him want to become a sentinel. And then he tells her that after she told him about the nightmares that she was having, that him and Leon went and hunted down Eric, the demon that ran off from her mom's cabin, and killed him. So she asks him to like play the guitar, and he does, and she reaches out and like puts her hand on his chest and feels the guitar pick she gave him on a chain under his shirt. So this whole time, remember when we were talking about Impure, that Aiden was wearing a necklace, Aiden don't never wear no jewelry? He's been wearing that guitar pick on a chain under his shirt, the guitar pick she gave him for his birthday. So he tells her, we should go to bed. And I'm like, yes, you should. So she goes upstairs and gets in bed, and Aiden comes in and holds her, and he apologizes for that day in the gym, which you should have, Aiden. You should have. But we forgive you. Yes. So they're finally together, and it is everything you want it to be. It is beautiful. So he tells her that he loves her and has since Atlanta. And the next morning, he calls her Agape Moo. And she says, what does that mean? You've been calling me that since we first met, since Atlanta. And he tells her that it means my love. So, and I wrote, ovaries go boom. And then Apollo shows up and tells her that he knows about her and Alex. I mean, he knows about her and Aiden. And she's like, oh crap, you know, and he's like, it's fine. Like, Aiden's a good man and he'll always put you first. And then he tells her that the gods were not responsible for the subjugation of the halves. That was the Pures. That the only rule the gods gave them, the only rule they gave them was that they're not supposed to mix, because you don't want a bunch of Apollons running around. So he tells her he wants her to hide from Seth. He'll find somewhere for her to go. He wants to hide her from Seth, and she's like, no. And so she's talking to Aiden about it, and like, you know, kind of like, what are we gonna do? And this is a quote from Aiden. Because I love you, we share each other's problems. When we fight together. I'm going to be by your side no matter what, whether you like it or not. That's what love is, Alex. You never have to face anything alone again. Aiden. Can I have somebody say that to me? So she feels Seth show up. Like they're having this like beautiful moment, right? Aiden has just said this, like, and they're having this beautiful moment, and then freaking Seth shows up. And she feels him, you know, she can always feel the connection. And so Aiden's like, let me go talk to him first. And so how well do you think that goes over? Aiden going to talk to Seth. Yeah. So Aiden goes outside talking to Seth. They're arguing. And she hears Seth say, you think I don't know that I haven't known this whole entire time? You're just a moment in time, and your moment will end. So Alex breaks him up and goes outside to talk to Seth. And Seth's like, I brought you a present, and like walks her to the courthouse. And she's on the way, they're talking, and she's like, Seth, I don't want to hurt you. And he's like, Alex, you can't hurt me. I've known this whole entire time how you feel about Aiden. So she asks him about the order and the Apollons, and he says he was told not to tell her. Yeah. So he takes her to the courthouse and shows her his gift, which is Headmaster Telly tied up in the cells. And he tells her that he felt it when she died. He knew. And then Lucian told him. So, and he's like talking all crazy. He's like, Alex, we can, when we get rid of Telly, like Lucian's going to change the world, blah, blah, blah. He's going to look out for halves, da, da, da. I mean, he's talking crazy. And, I mean, she's trying to like talk some sense into him. She's like, Seth, don't you understand? Like, Lucian wants to get rid of Telly so he can be the head minister. So he can be the king of the throne. That's what he wants. Like, he's using you. And Seth is just like being a freaking psycho. And she's not having it. She keeps trying to talk him down. He's like mad that she doesn't want to be his like evil queen. So he like shoves her and tells her to leave. And so she's leaving, and when she gets to the door, there's Lucian and his guards. And Lucian is like, you're coming home with me. And there's nothing she can do because he's her legal guardian. So she's like, oh yeah, sure, that's fine. Let me just go to Aiden's house and get my stuff. And he's like, no, Seth will take care of it. And I was like, okay, Clint, this is not going to be good. So Lucian tells her when they get in the car that he's basically been playing father to Seth to be able to manipulate Seth, and that he'll be able to control her through Seth. So he's got Seth by the short and curlies, and he will have Alex by the short and curlies through Seth. And if he has 2 Apollons, he will rule the world with his 2 Apollons. So when they get to his house, he's got a symbol on the wall that's like a room to keep Apollo out of his house. So basically, ain't nobody coming to save her, okay? And at dinner, Alex tries to like take a steak knife and kill Lucian, and Seth tackles her and then drags her to her bedroom. And she tries to like talk some sense into him, tries to get him to let her go. And he says he can't, that he likes the power too much. And she says, don't you remember you promised that if it ever got too much, you would leave? And he's like, I'm sorry, that promise is null and void. And then she tries to make a run for it, and he pushes her back to him with the air element, and then he forces another rune on her. And then he tries to make out with her again after she done, like tried her best to get away from him. And she's like, please don't touch me. And he actually listens. But then later on, he pulls Akasha, that power from her again, to show Lucian what he can do, like a freaking kindergartner with a darn macaroni drawn. So then Marcus and Aiden come, but Lucian won't let either one of them see Alex. So then like a few days later, Seth's like, get dressed, we're leaving, and you need to try and look at least a little bit like my mate. He shuts the door so she can change, and she hauls Boogie for the window. And before she can let go of the window sill and drop to the ground, he grabs her. He drags her to the Hummer and then drags her into the courthouse. Lucian has called an emergency council meeting. Lucian tells them about Telly's attacks on Alex and about Aiden using compulsion to protect Alex. And they get Telly to confess to attacking Alex, but he's been compelled to confess. So Lucian calls for Seth. Seth drags Alex out onto the stage, and Telly asks Seth what he thinks. Lucian asks Seth what Telly's fate should be, and Seth's like, he should die. And Alex is like trying to get away from him. She tries to talk him down, but he rips the Akasha from her and kills Telly. Then the Furies show up because Seth is doing things he ain't supposed to be doing, and the gods are mad, they sent the Furies. So the Furies show up. He kills a freaking Fury, and they tell him that he's made war with the gods. And the Furies say, and this is a quote from the Furies, you risk them all to gorge yourself on power that was never yours. What a path you have chosen. Like, in other words, like, this could have been different, dude, but now you done made war with the gods. So the Furies leave. Alex goes for Lucian, but Seth stops her. And then some of the council, Dawn Samos, Leah's sister, for one, are like speaking out against Lucian. They're like, you can't do this. Like, you can't just execute somebody without a trial, blah, blah, blah. And so Seth is now going to kill the council members that are speaking out against Lucian. And Alex tries to stop him, but there's no use because Seth is like full on like freaking psycho. So Seth kills some of the council members, including Leah's sister. So now Leah has nobody, right? Because Alex's mom killed Leah's parents, or led the attack that killed her parents. And now Seth has used Alex's power to kill Leah's sister. So Leah has no family left. So Alex makes a run for it while Seth is kind of drunk on power. And Aiden grabs her. And then when they get to the hall, Lucian's guards are there. And Aiden fights them all. So they meet up with Marcus, Solos, Leah, and Luke. And Apollo shows up and tells them to leave. He's like, you have to leave now. You have to get off the island. He's like, I'll hold them off while you guys leave. And so Alex is like too weak because Seth's been sucking her dry. And Marcus has to carry her. And Marcus sends Aiden on ahead to like get people off the island. And when they get to Aiden's, they load up in the Hummers. Deacon like goes to get in the car with Aiden, and he's like, no, you can't ride with us. And Aiden like hugs him and whispers something to him. And then when they're getting ready to leave, there's this big loud boom. There's this huge lightning strike. And then there's all these water funnels. And then all of a sudden, like as they're crossing the bridge, getting onto the mainland, a freaking tidal wave comes and wipes off Deity Island, and there is nothing left. Not a single building, not a car, not nothing. It's all been wiped off into the ocean. So they're heading for Athens, Ohio, because Solos's father has a cabin there. And when they stop for gas and snacks, Deacon, Solos, and Alex are inside. Marcus, Leon, Leon wasn't there. Marcus, Aiden, and Luke and Leah are outside. Okay. So all of a sudden Alex starts smelling this like musty smell, and she's like, I know that smell. It's the underworld. And then there's two hellhounds and Hades. Yes, Hades is the god of the underworld, or the god of hell, whatever. So Hades is there with two hellhounds, and Solos, Deacon, and Alex are trapped inside. Solos is fighting one hellhound. Alex is fighting the other hellhound. Alex kills her hellhound. Hades grabs her. But before he can do anything, Artemis shoots an arrow at him. Artemis just shows up out of nowhere and tells him to let her go. She says she is of Apollo's lineage and not to be harmed. And then he says, I wouldn't hurt her. I would just take her to the underworld to keep her away from Seth. And he says, you know that Zeus is going to step in if Seth becomes the god killer. And Artemis says, there's still hope. So this is the second person who's saying that. So Alex decides to go with Hades because she's thinking about it. She's like, you know, what's going to happen if Zeus comes? He's going to kill everybody. And I don't want Alex to die. I don't want Deacon to die. I don't want Marcus to die. So I'll go with Hades. I'll sacrifice myself. You see now why I was getting upset with Alex? I'm like, Alex, if you don't freaking sit down somewhere, me and you're going to have a problem. Okay? So she decides to sacrifice herself. But before she can go with Hades, Artemis shoots Hades in the head with an arrow, which won't kill him. It'll just like put him out of commission for a while. So then Artemis opens the doors and let the others in, and she tells them that Alex is strong and that she can turn the tides on the first. She tells her that prophecies always change and that power never flows one way. The key is to find a way to reverse it. And then she's gone. And Aiden grabs Alex and is like, don't ever do anything like that ever again. So when they get to Ohio, Apollo gives them a room to put on the wall to keep out anybody with ill will. And Alex goes to Leah's room and apologizes. And Leah's like, look, I know it's not your fault. I don't blame you. But right now, every time I look at your face, all I see is the family that I've lost. So I just can't right now. And so Alex goes to bed. And when she wakes up, there's Aiden telling her, because she's like, what are you doing in here? Like, we're going to get caught. And he's like, I'm pretty sure everybody already knows about us. And he tells her that when Marcus figured it out, he actually punched him in the face twice. So he tells her that he wants to leave the hematoid so they can be together. He's like, let's just say, you know, when all this is done and over with, let's go live in the mortal world and be together. So the next day is her birthday, and Aiden gives her a birthday present that he made, which is a necklace with a rose made out of crystals or rubies. I don't know. She says a crystal necklace in the shape of a rose that he made for her. And he's like, you know, you need to come downstairs, like quit moping and come downstairs. So when she gets downstairs, they're having like an impromptu birthday party for her. Like Luke and Deacon went to the store and got a Spider-Man birthday cake because it was either Spider-Man or My Little Pony. And Apollo shows up and they're all eating Spider-Man cake. It's just this really nice, like kind of friends and family moment. And then Apollo tells them that Lucian has help, says that somebody's pulling the strings, and that if you just take out Lucian, then that won't stop anything and it won't help you figure out who the god is behind Lucian. And he tells them that Alex is going to have to kill Seth when she awakens. And Alex is like, I can't do that. And Leah is like ticked. And Apollo says that he's like, I know you care for Seth, like you were built that way, but this is the only way. You have to kill him. And she's kind of like, but is that the only way? And he doesn't say anything. So Leah tells her, Leah's like, look, Seth killed all those people just like your mom. And, you know, you had to stop your mom, even though you loved her, even though she was a demon and you still loved her, you still had to stop her. And how is this any different? And Apollo's just kind of like, all right, you know, let's everybody give Alex like some time or whatever. So everybody disperses, and Alex and Aiden are sitting in the sunroom when all of a sudden the marks start appearing on her skin, like somebody is tattooing her, like beads of blood show up in the shape of the marks, like she's being tattooed, but it's all over her body, all at the same time. So she is screaming. And Aiden's like trying to comfort her, and everybody comes running outside, running into the sunroom, and then she's like, everybody get out. And so like Aiden moves everybody out and shuts the door in their face, all except for Marcus. Marcus is like, she's my niece and I'm not leaving. So Alex gets all the information from the Apollyon memories, and Solaris turned on the first and used Akasha against him to subdue him because he went against the council. And her cord reaches out for Seth. It finds Seth. She realizes that Seth planned all of this from the beginning. That's why he tried to put the marks on her. That's why he drew off of her Akasha, so that he would kind of like know her energy signature basically, and he could find her if she ran. Like he planned all this from the get-go. And then next thing you know, she's filled with Seth. And she's not Alex anymore. She's basically Seth Jr. inside. And Apollo shows up and tells Aiden to let her go, because Aiden is like holding her, rocking her on the sunroom floor. And Apollo shows up and like, Aiden, let her go now. That's not Alex. And that's the end. So the next oh my god. So the next one is Elixir, which is from Aiden's point of view, which is actually part of the Deity ebook. But I had it as a separate book, but that was like, that was a minute ago. So, all right. So thanks you guys. I'll see you next time for Elixir.